second speaker, Amita Priyadarshini. In the little knowledge that we have through this paper, Amita Priyadarshini is a very accomplished person. She is M.Com at St. Joseph's College of Commerce. She has been a very active youth member, youth leader, student governor of St. Joseph's College, ICUF state animator, welfare officer in the Department of Commerce, ICUF convener in St. Joseph's. She has also published her articles, research papers. I was fascinated by the topics. A study on green banking in India. I never heard of green banking. Its impact on return on equity and sustainable development in the International Journal of Business and Administration Research Review. She has also paper presentations. The Paradox of Sustainable Ecotourism, a case-based study of India at Sunway College in Malaysia. Financial inclusion, credit access and awareness among the urban poor at the Bharathidasan University in Trichy. She also had Best Research Proposal on Qualitative Track at the Doctoral Summer School organized by IIMA. She was ranked first in M.Com. She was the best everywhere as an outgoing student in every college she studied as well. I was really in admiration of her, that every college she has gone, she has come out as a best outgoing student. Great. She was also president of the Hashmi Theatre Forum, so she is interested in theatrics, or stage. She was also Best Actress, awarded as Best Actress for the Intercollegiate Theatre Fest. She's also a football player and has captained the team as well. So, she was also president of Student Union in Mount Carmel College. So, we have in our midst certainly a wonderful woman who has accomplished a lot in her life, and I'm sure will bring in much more inspiration to all of us listeners. Over to Amita.
Thank you so much, Father. It's a bit embarrassing if you get a good thing. But, so the topic given to me today was the challenges and perceptions of the youth with respect to the religious. But I'd like to start off by saying, I see a lot of fantastic ventures that have come up, fantastic initiatives that have come up today. For example, Youth Mass and organizations like the ICUF and the youth movements, various youth movements that are there today in engaging the youth. And I think programs like, we have a program called Marges, as part of St. Joseph's, we go for Marges all the time. And that's a place where you see a sense of community amongst Catholic youth. There's an interaction between the religious and the youth. As a matter of fact, there's no boundary that exists between the religious and the youth. We're all one at programs like this. But that being said, at the outset, I also have a few observations that I have come across. So to understand the youth of today, we need a bit of perspective, right? Who is the youth of today? Essentially, people like myself, millennials and Generation Z are what we call the youth of today. And the youth of today are so different from the youth of yesterday and the youth of the day before. They're very different. In the sense that the youth today are more perceptive and more sensitive. Now, when I look at sensitive as a characteristic, it has both positives as well as negatives. As sensitive youth, we are sensitive to things around us. We get affected by it. We have the ability to empathize. Sensitivity also has a lot of issues, right? You'll see a lot of stress amongst the youth today. They're very susceptible to stress and a lot of pressures. But this essence of sensitivity has to be understood, especially when it comes to a concept of corrective action. If youth are corrected through, shouting at them and humiliating them in front of an audience to, make them an example to the rest, they don't tend to be perceptive to that or learn or benefit from that. To give you an example, I'm a teacher. Now let's say I go on shouting at my students. What essentially happens here is, A, the student might hate my subject, or B, hate the institution which I represent, my college. But when it's a person from a religious background, it is a father or sister who engages in such corrective action, look at the implications here. Because for us as Catholic youth, a priest and a nun are the face of the Catholic Church. So essentially, when we are being reprimanded in such a way, we feel that it's not just them as an individual, but the entire class who is reprimanding us, and also the church as well. And this might be one of the reasons why we see youth moving away from the church to a great extent. But that being said, it doesn't mean that all religious behave in this way. To give you a very interesting story, which I now remember suddenly. So, in our colleges, we have this thing, after every cultural activity, at the end of the day, at around 6 or 7, we have something called a DJ night or a battle of the bands, okay, essentially speaking. Some of you who are principals in the audience will, think to yourself, oh my God, I know what's happening here. Because I remember that it was one of these battle of the bands that we had, a band was playing. And I think in the keynote address, they said, the youth are very loving. Did you hear that? There's a lot of love amongst the youth. So during this performance, there was a boy and a girl, and they were very loving, essentially speaking. Like they were completely caught up with each other. And standing next to them was one of our fathers, of our college. And he just stood there and he looked at them. Now, a natural knee-jerk reaction is you go, you shout at them, you say, what are you doing? Is this the way your parents have brought you up? Right? What sort of upbringing you have? Is this Christian culture? He didn't do any of that. He just stood there and he waited. At one point of time, they realized that something was going on. So they looked and they saw him standing there. He went up to them and said, come and meet me later on. Now, when they met him later on, they were so scared. What is Father going to say to us? Right? So when he met them later on, he said, listen, my child, is this, I understand that you have these feelings. But he explained to them why that was not all right. So here is an example of corrective action, which doesn't necessarily mean you shout at the person. And I think that is something that I really learned from, I took back, and that's something that guides me today as a faculty as well. Coming back to a negative experience. Now, when the youth have a negative experience, this person shouted at me, this person screamed at me, yelled at me, humiliated me, they feel that in their heart. Now, to add to this today, we have a lot of negative media coverage surrounding the church as well. Now, this adds to their perception. They already had a negative feeling towards one individual. They now have this information that is available, and now you feel, yes, I was right in what I thought, the entire system is bad. So I think this is one of the biggest perceptions and issues with regard to the youth and the religious. The second I'd like to talk about is this principle of the ability to relate. If someone can relate to my problems, to the things that I am facing in this present time, then it makes it easier for me to open up to that person. We all come from different backgrounds, but the ability to relate is something that we can definitely cultivate. For example, whenever we talk about technology, we always say technology is bad, the youth are always in technology, they're tech addicted, always on their phones. And we leave it at that. But I would like to think about it this way. As a millennial, I am called a digital native, which means we are born into a world of technology. For me, technology is like my right arm. None of us are addicted to our right arms. It's part of our being. So instead of looking at technology as the problem, why not look at technology as a medium through which the youth can be reached out to? I think that is something that is very, very important. That ability to relate. How many of us in the crowd know what LOL is? LOL? Laugh out loud, right? BRB. This is the kind of, this is the way the youth speak today, through messaging. So to be able to relate to them, to bring stories that relate to their context, is also something that I feel is supposed to be looked into. The third thing I'd like to talk about is this concept of judgment. If I open up, I'm going to be judged. And that feeling of judgment generally pulls people back from coming and opening up. When people come and share their issues, there should be no judgment involved, irrespective of what they're sharing. So generally, there's a feeling, there's a perception that, if I go and say this, I'm going to be judged. And there's so many other things that are happening in our lives. We're so stressed out already. We don't need judgment to be added to it. So that's another problem and issue that arises. It's a perception issue. A lot of people talk about the problems of this generation. This generation has so many problems. This is problem A, B, and C. But I'd like to remind everyone that our parents said that about us. Their parents said it about them. And their parents also said it about our grandparents. Each generation feels that their generation is the best and the one that comes after is seriously lacking. Each generation tries to make the new generation follow the standards set by the old, instead of looking at the new context. So today I think as the religious, it is not about being separate as the religious, but being one amongst the youth, with the youth. There should be no separation there. The second thing I'd like to end by saying is, it's not about the flaws of a particular generation or a group of people. It's about adapting to that change and then interacting with the youth that we have. So I think that's all I have to say. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Amita. Amita shared with us on a very positive note how a lot has happened in and around the youth. A lot. Youth mass perhaps, youth groups perhaps, and all the adventure among the youth in the Catholic Church, including of the great act of Pope Francis, which has touched the youth. So there's a lot good, a lot positives. Yes, they are the millennials, they are the Generation Z maybe. Yeah? We are still perhaps in Generation X. We are not yet perhaps. And she is asking us, we must move to Generation Z. We must understand the context today and not compare always with the past and say we were better than you. There are negative experiences, and her suggestion in her sharing is that we must help the youth in corrective actions which are positive. Youth can make mistakes, youth can go out of their way, but the way we deal with them, the way we relate with them makes all the difference. And therefore, non-judgmental attitude will help a lot in bringing back the youth to the center. And therefore, she is requesting the religious, please be with the youth, don't run away. Thank you very much, Amita, for your inspiring.